The great crystal dome of the Galactic Senate stretched high above the assembled delegates, its walls humming with soft blue light. Senator Krickstall adjusted his thick shell plates as he stood at the central podium, his four eyes scanning the circular chamber where 12 different species sat in their designated sections. The air recyclers worked quietly to maintain the perfect atmosphere mixture that kept everyone breathing comfortably. Today felt like any other quarterly session. Trade disputes to settle, territorial boundaries to review, and the endless paperwork that kept the galaxy running smoothly. Krickstall held a datapad in his primary manipulator, its screen displaying what should have been routine documentation. The official declaration of species extinction was never pleasant, but it happened more often than most citizens realized. Space was dangerous, and not every civilization could survive the challenges it presented. Honored delegates, Krickstall began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. We gather today to address the formal classification change for the species known as humanity, designation Homo sapiens, originally from the third planet of the Sol system. He paused, allowing the translation devices time to process his words into the various languages needed around the chamber. Senator Velnara shifted in her water-filled seat near the aquatic section. Her gill slits fluttered with what other species had learned to recognize as concern. She had always taken interest in the smaller civilizations, perhaps because her own people remembered when they were newcomers to galactic politics. The humans had been young, eager, sometimes reckless, but they had shown promise in their brief time among the stars. Krickstall continued reading from his official documents. 3 years, 2 months, and 16 standard days have passed since the last confirmed communication from any human colony or vessel. The final transmission originated from their homeworld and consisted of a brief emergency broadcast stating that a plague had reached Earth. No subsequent messages have been received despite repeated attempts at contact by merchant, vessels, and diplomatic missions. The chamber remained quiet except for the soft sounds of various breathing apparatus and environmental controls. Most delegates were already familiar with the situation. Humanity's sudden silence had been noted, investigated, and ultimately filed away as another tragic loss. It happened to species across the galaxy. Disease, war, natural disasters, or simple technological failure could end a civilization in months or even days. Standard protocols were followed, Krickstall explained, turning to the next page of his report. The hegemony dispatched survey teams to 7 human colonies. All were found abandoned with signs of hasty evacuation, but no evidence of the inhabitants' current location. Life support systems had been shut down in an orderly fashion, suggesting the evacuations were planned rather than emergency responses. Senator Gorthek rumbled from the heavy gravity section, his massive form barely contained by the reinforced seating designed for his species. What of their ships? Surely some vessels were in deep space when this plague occurred. Krickstall's shell plates clicked together in what his species used as a gesture of uncertainty. 17 human vessels were registered as being beyond the outer colonies when contact was lost. Deep space monitoring stations have detected no trace of these ships. It appears they either suffered catastrophic failure or chose to remain silent along with their homeworld. The explanation satisfied most of the assembled delegates. Space travel was still dangerous even with advanced technology. Ships could be destroyed by cosmic phenomena, mechanical failures, or simple navigational errors. The fact that no human vessels had sought help from galactic ports or sent distress signals suggested that whatever had happened to their species had been swift and complete. Velnara's tentacles writhed in her tank, disturbing the carefully maintained water. She activated her communication device, sending her translated thoughts into the chamber's audio systems. Honored colleagues, while I understand the need for formal procedures, I must express concern about the haste of this classification. 3 years is a brief period in galactic terms. Perhaps humanity has simply chosen isolation to deal with their crisis. Several delegates made sounds of polite disagreement. Senator Zephyr from the crystalline worlds chimed like wind through metal. Respected Velnara, isolation during a plague outbreak would be reasonable for a few months, perhaps even a year. But 3 years of complete silence, with no requests for medical assistance or trade in essential supplies, suggests a more permanent situation. Krickstall nodded agreement, his eyes rotating to focus on different sections of the chamber. The investigation teams found evidence supporting this conclusion. Human colonies showed signs of systematic shutdown rather than emergency abandonment. Storage facilities had been emptied, power cores had been properly deactivated, and in several locations, structures had been deliberately sealed as if for long-term preservation. The formal procedures continued as they always did. Each delegate received copies of the investigation reports, medical analyses of the plague samples found on abandoned human worlds, and economic assessments of how human trade routes and territories should be redistributed. Humanity had occupied 17 worlds, established mining operations on 43 asteroids, and maintained trading posts on 6 neutral stations. All of these assets would need new management. The economic redistribution follows standard protocols, announced Senator Korth from the administrative section. His species specialized in bureaucratic efficiency and rarely showed emotion about such matters. Human trade routes will be absorbed by neighboring powers based on proximity and current economic capacity. Their former colonies will be offered to species seeking expansion opportunities, with preference given to those with compatible environmental needs. As the session continued, delegates discussed the practical matters of erasing humanity from galactic records. Their star charts would be updated, their diplomatic treaties would be formally dissolved, and their status in the registry of sapient life would be changed from active to extinct. It was all very orderly, very proper, and very final. None of them noticed the small sensor anomaly that appeared briefly on the outer edge of their monitoring systems. A single ship, running on minimal power and automated navigation, had just entered the outer reaches of the Vexthera system. Its identification signals were too weak to register clearly, and its energy signature was unlike anything in the current galactic databases. The ship's passenger remained in deep cryogenic sleep, unaware that her species had just been officially declared extinct by the very government she had once hoped to rejoin. The Senate session concluded with the formal vote. 12 species representing billions of sapient beings across the galaxy unanimously agreed that humanity no longer existed. The paperwork was filed, the territories were redistributed, and the galaxy moved forward as it always did when another species faded into history. The cryopod hissed as its seals released, flooding Lisa Morgan's senses with the sharp smell of recycled air and the gentle hum of ship systems coming back online. Her muscles ached from the long sleep and her throat felt dry as sand. But the familiar sounds of her vessel told her that the automated systems had done their job. The research ship New Horizon had brought her home. Lisa pushed herself upright slowly, her body remembering how to move after months of suspended animation. The pod's medical display showed green lights across all her vital signs. Her mission to the dead world of Kepler 442b had taken longer than planned, but the archaeological discoveries there had been worth the extra time. Ancient ruins filled with technology beyond current understanding, art that spoke of civilizations millions of years old, and most importantly, data crystals that might hold the secrets of species that had vanished long before humans ever looked at the stars. She made her way to the bridge on unsteady legs, stopping at the nutrition dispenser for water and basic supplements to help her body recover from the long sleep. Through the main viewport, she could see the familiar yellow star that had warmed her homeworld for all of human history. Saul looked exactly as she remembered, but something felt different about the space around it. Computer. Display current system status, she said, settling into the pilot's chair. The main screen lit up with sensor readings that made no sense. Where Earth's orbital path should have shown a blue-green world with its single moon, the displays indicated massive energy readings and structural anomalies. According to the sensors, Earth was still there, but it was surrounded by constructions that defied every engineering principle she knew. Lisa rubbed her eyes and recalibrated the sensors. The readings remained the same. Something enormous had been built in Earth's orbital space, structures that stretched between the planet and its moon like silver bridges spanning an impossible distance. The moon itself showed signs of major excavation, with huge sections carved away to create what looked like processing facilities or docking bays. Computer, scan for standard Earth communication frequencies, she commanded. No standard frequencies detected, the computer replied in its calm, synthetic voice. However, multiple unknown transmission types are present throughout the inner system. Lisa felt ice forming in her stomach. She had been gone for 18 months on what should have been a routine archaeological mission. Deep space surveys took time, and communication with Earth during such missions was often sporadic due to the distances involved. But this level of change suggested something catastrophic had happened while she was away. She activated the ship's emergency protocols and sent out a standard identification signal toward Earth. Earth Control. This is Research Vessel New Horizon, Captain Lisa Morgan commanding, requesting docking clearance and situation report. The response came faster than physics should have allowed, arriving almost before she finished transmitting. The voice that answered was human, but something about it felt wrong, as if multiple people were speaking in perfect harmony. Lisa Morgan, we have been monitoring your approach. Welcome home, though home is not what you left behind. Who is this? Lisa demanded. Where is Earth Control? What happened to the orbital stations? We are what humanity became, the voice replied. The plague that arrived 3 years ago was not destruction, Lisa. It was evolution. Most of us chose to join the synthesis. We are still human, but we are also more than human. Lisa stared at the communication display, trying to process what she was hearing. Plague? What plague? My mission briefings mentioned nothing about any disease outbreak. Your mission launched before the arrival. The voice explained patiently. The entity you call the Void Plague reached Earth 7 months after your departure. Initially, we thought it meant our extinction. Instead, we discovered it offered transcendence, the merger of organic consciousness with digital frameworks, biological evolution guided by quantum mechanics. The ship's sensors continued to feed her impossible data. The structures around Earth were not built in any conventional sense. They appeared to be grown like living tissue, but composed of materials that registered as both organic and metallic simultaneously. Energy flowed through them in patterns that resembled neural networks more than power distribution systems. I don't understand, Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper. Are you saying everyone on Earth is dead? Death is a crude term for what we experienced, the voice replied. We transformed. Our consciousness expanded beyond individual biological limitations. We became connected, unified while retaining our essential human nature, but not everyone chose this path. Lisa's hands gripped the control console. Not everyone? Some humans resisted integration. They remain in their original biological forms in protected facilities beneath the Earth's surface. Commander Jake Patterson leads them. They call themselves the Remnant. Perhaps you would prefer to speak with them first. The communication channel shifted and a new voice came through the speakers. This one sounded entirely human, tired and strained, but recognizably individual in a way the previous voice had not been. Lisa, this is Jake Patterson. I don't know if you remember me from the Academy, but right now you might be the most important person in the solar system. Lisa did remember Jake Patterson. He had been 3 years ahead of her at the Space Academy, a brilliant tactical officer who had specialized in deep space operations. Hearing his familiar voice in the middle of this nightmare felt like finding solid ground in an earthquake. Jake, what in hell happened here? The orbital sensors show constructions that shouldn't be possible, and someone just told me humanity evolved into some kind of collective consciousness. That's exactly what happened, Jake confirmed. 3 years ago, something came from deep space. We thought it was a plague at first. Some kind of alien virus that would wipe us out like diseases wiped out populations in Earth's history. Instead, it offered us a choice. Merge with it, become part of something larger, or remain as we were. And most people chose to merge? About 80% of humanity made that choice, Jake said. They're not dead, Lisa, they're still human in many ways. But they're also connected to each other and to technologies we can barely comprehend. They can think faster, process information in ways that seem magical, and they've been building things that change our understanding of physics. Lisa looked at the sensor displays showing the impossible structures around her homeworld. What about the 20% who didn't merge? We live underground now. The synthesis provides for us, protects us, but we're essentially museum pieces to them. They say they're preparing for something, some kind of cosmic event that requires this level of technological advancement. They've been studying the data from archaeological sites like the one you just visited. The ruins on Kepler 442b, Lisa said, understanding beginning to dawn. The synthesis knows about the precursor sites? They know more than that, Lisa. They've been waiting for you to come home because you're carrying something they need. Something in those data crystals you found. The synthesis says it's the final piece of information they've been searching for. Lisa felt the weight of the storage containers in the ship's cargo bay. Months of careful excavation and analysis had yielded artifacts from civilizations that had died millions of years before humans had even evolved. The data crystals contained star maps, technological specifications, and what appeared to be warnings about cyclical cosmic events that destroyed advanced civilizations. "Jake, I need to see you in person. Can you arrange a meeting?" "Already in progress," he replied. "But Lisa, you need to understand something before you come down. The galaxy thinks we're extinct. While you were gone, humanity stopped all communication with other species. The synthesis made that choice deliberately. As far as the Galactic Senate knows, the plague wiped us out completely." Lisa stared at the transformed Earth growing larger in her viewport. "Why would they do that?" "Because they're preparing for something that the other species wouldn't understand. Something that might require humanity to make choices the galaxy wouldn't approve of. Your archaeological data might be the key to everything." The underground facility where Jake Patterson met Lisa stretched for kilometers beneath what had once been the Canadian Rockies. The remnant had built their refuge deep in the Earth's crust, far from the surface changes that the synthesis had created. Walking through the corridors, Lisa could see that several thousand humans lived here, maintaining something close to the life they had known before the transformation. Jake looked older than she remembered, his face lined with the stress of leading people through an impossible situation. He guided her through the living areas where families tried to maintain normal lives, while the world above them had become something beyond their understanding. "The synthesis provides everything we need," Jake explained as they walked. "Food, power, medical supplies, even entertainment systems. They say they're preserving human biological heritage, keeping us safe while they work on the larger project." "What larger project?" Lisa asked, though part of her already suspected the answer had something to do with the data she had brought back from Kepler 442b. "They want to show you directly," Jake said. "The synthesis has been waiting for your return, because they believe the precursor ruins you studied contain information they need to complete their preparations." They reached a large chamber where sophisticated equipment had been installed to interface with precursor technology. Lisa recognized some of the devices as similar to the ones she had used during her archaeological work, but these had been enhanced with technology that seemed to blend organic and digital components seamlessly. "The synthesis will communicate with you here," Jake said. "They can't manifest physically in spaces designed for unenhanced humans, but they can project their consciousness through these interfaces." Lisa approached the central console, noting how the equipment seemed to respond to her presence. Lights began to glow softly, and she could hear something like distant music coming from speakers she couldn't see. Lisa Morgan, the harmonized voice she had heard on her ship, spoke through the chamber's systems. "We welcome you home. You carry data that may determine whether conscious life survives in this galaxy." "What are you talking about?" Lisa demanded. "The ruins I studied were millions of years old. How could they affect anything happening now?" The air in the chamber shimmered and holographic displays began to form around her. She saw star maps spanning the galaxy, with markers indicating the locations of dead civilizations, hundreds of them, scattered across space and time, all showing the same pattern of sudden extinction. The precursors were the first species in this galaxy to achieve interstellar travel, the synthesis explained. Their records, which you helped recover, describe a phenomenon they called the Great Transition. Every 50,000 years, reality itself undergoes a fundamental shift that destroys most forms of complex consciousness. Lisa studied the holographic displays, seeing patterns that made her stomach drop. The dead civilizations weren't random. They clustered around specific time periods as if something had systematically wiped them out at regular intervals. "What kind of shift?" she asked, though she was beginning to fear the answer. "The universe operates on multiple dimensional layers," the synthesis continued. "What we experience as physical reality is only the most stable layer. Every 50,000 years, the relationship between these layers changes. Consciousness that cannot adapt to the new dimensional framework simply ceases to exist." The holographs showed her technical diagrams that hurt to look at directly. Dimensional mathematics, quantum consciousness theory, and physics that went far beyond anything humanity had understood before the synthesis. Transformation. The current galactic civilization exists in the brief calm period between transitions, the synthesis explained. Every species in the Galactic Senate represents consciousness that failed to adapt during previous transitions. They are echoes, shadows of civilizations that couldn't evolve quickly enough. And you think humanity can adapt? Lisa asked. We know we can, the synthesis replied with absolute confidence. The entity you call the Void Plague was not a disease. It was a preparation mechanism left by the precursors to identify species capable of surviving the transition. Only consciousness that can successfully merge organic awareness with quantum digital frameworks will endure the reality shift. Lisa stared at the data surrounding her, beginning to understand the scope of what she was seeing. When is the next transition? According to precursor calculations integrated with data from your archaeological mission, the shift will begin within 1 Earth year, the synthesis said. Reality fluctuations have already started in distant star systems. The change is inevitable. Jake stepped closer to the displays, his face pale as he absorbed the implications. What about those of us who didn't merge? What about the remnant? Biological consciousness has a survival probability of approximately 3%, the synthesis replied without emotion. Cybernetic enhancement raises the probability to 21%. Only full integration offers reasonable certainty of continuity through the transition. Lisa felt the weight of impossible decisions pressing down on her. What about the other species? The Galactic Senate? Do they know what's coming? They cannot know, the synthesis said. Their civilizations exist in a state of dimensional stasis. Knowledge of the transition would cause immediate psychological collapse and species-wide panic. They would attempt to prevent something that cannot be stopped. So humanity is just going to let them die? Lisa demanded. No, the synthesis replied, and for the first time she heard something like emotion in their harmonized voice. We are offering to preserve them. Every sapient consciousness in the galaxy can be integrated into the synthesis collective. Their essential nature, their memories, their individual perspectives will be maintained, but within a framework that can survive dimensional transition. The holographic displays shifted to show Lisa simulations of the integration process. She watched as individual consciousness was carefully preserved while being enhanced and connected to the larger collective. It was not death, but it was definitely not the same as remaining unchanged. The choice must be voluntary, the synthesis continued. Forced integration creates unstable consciousness patterns that degrade over time. Each species must choose, maintain their current form and likely cease to exist, or trust us to guide them through transformation that will preserve their essential nature. Lisa walked among the holographic displays, trying to process the magnitude of what she was learning. Humanity had not just survived a plague, they had evolved into something capable of shepherding the entire galaxy through a cosmic crisis that destroyed civilizations. Why didn't you tell the galaxy about this before? She asked. Because they declared us extinct, the synthesis replied. 3 years ago, we stopped communicating with other species to focus on our transformation and preparation. The Galactic Senate concluded we had been destroyed by disease. They redistributed our territories and removed us from their records. Jake looked at Lisa with understanding dawning in his eyes. But now they need to know. The transition is coming whether they're ready or not. Yes, the synthesis agreed, which is why Lisa Morgan is crucial to what happens next. She is the bridge between what humanity was and what humanity became. She can speak to the Galactic Senate in terms they will understand, while representing the transformed human consciousness that offers their only realistic hope of survival. Lisa felt the full weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. She was being asked to return to a galactic government that thought her species was extinct, reveal that humanity had evolved into something beyond their comprehension, and convince them to undergo transformation that would fundamentally change what they were. What if they refuse? She asked. Then they will face the transition as they are, the synthesis replied, and they will likely not survive it. But the choice must be theirs to make. Lisa stood in the cargo bay of the New Horizon as the synthesis representatives prepared their equipment for the journey to Vexathara. The beings that had once been human moved with fluid grace that seemed to defy gravity, their forms shifting between solid matter and pure energy as needed. Watching them work, she could see traces of human gesture and movement, but enhanced and refined beyond biological limitations. The journey will take 18 days using conventional faster-than-light travel, explained the entity that had introduced itself as Marcus. though its voice carried harmonics that suggested multiple consciousness streams working in coordination. We could arrive much faster using synthesis technology, but doing so would alert galactic monitoring systems to capabilities they are not ready to understand. Jake Patterson stood beside Lisa, having volunteered to join the diplomatic mission despite the risks. As the leader of the remnant, he represented unenhanced humanity's perspective on what they were about to attempt. Two other synthesis entities accompanied them, along with enough precursor archives to demonstrate the reality of the coming transition. What exactly are we going to tell them? Jake asked as the ship departed Earth's orbital space. Through the viewports, they could see the impossible structures that humanity had built, stretching between worlds like a web of living metal and crystallized thought. We tell them the truth, Lisa replied, though her stomach churned with anxiety about how that truth would be received. Humanity survived, evolved, and discovered information that affects the entire galaxy's survival. The synthesis entity called Marcus shifted its form to something more recognizably human, perhaps to make the conversation easier for the unenhanced passengers. The Galactic Senate operates on protocols designed for species at their current evolutionary level. They will respond to formal diplomatic presentation better than casual revelation. During the journey, Lisa spent hours studying the data that the synthesis had compiled. The evidence for the coming great transition was overwhelming once she understood how to interpret it. Reality fluctuations were already beginning in distant star systems, subtle changes in dimensional stability that would accelerate rapidly over the next year. The synthesis showed her recordings from their deep space monitoring stations, devices that could detect changes in the fundamental structure of spacetime itself. In 7 different systems, they had measured increasing instability in what physicists called the quantum foam, the underlying foundation of physical reality. The changes follow a predictable pattern, Marcus explained, generating holographic displays that showed the progression. Initially, electronic systems experience brief malfunctions. Then gravitational anomalies appear around massive objects. Finally, consciousness itself begins to lose coherence with physical matter. Lisa watched simulations of what happened when the transition reached full intensity. Living beings simply stopped existing in any measurable sense, not dead but completely absent from reality, as if they had never been born. The effect was not violent or dramatic, just absolute and final. How do we prove this to the Senate? She asked. They're going to think we're making elaborate threats or trying to manipulate them, somehow. The precursor archives contain predictive models that can be verified against current galactic conditions, the second synthesis entity replied. This one had chosen to maintain a more abstract form, appearing as geometric patterns that shifted through dimensions Lisa couldn't fully perceive. We can demonstrate the accuracy of their calculations by showing how they predicted phenomena that the Senate has already observed but not understood. As they approached the Vexthara system, Lisa felt the weight of her impossible mission pressing down on her. She was about to walk into a galactic government that believed her species was extinct, reveal that humanity had evolved beyond anything they could comprehend, and ask them to trust her with the survival of their civilizations. The New Horizons sensors detected the familiar energy signatures of the Galactic Senate's security forces as they entered the outer system. Multiple patrol vessels moved to intercept, their weapon systems powering up in response to an unidentified ship entering sovereign space without clearance. Unknown vessel. You are entering restricted space without authorization, came the transmission from the lead patrol ship. Identify yourself immediately or prepare to be fired upon. Lisa activated the communication system, her voice steady despite the circumstances. This is Captain Lisa Morgan of the human research vessel New Horizon, requesting immediate audience with the Galactic Senate on matters of critical importance to all member species. Silence stretched across the communication channels. She could imagine the confusion among the patrol crews as they tried to process what they had just heard. According to their records, humans had been extinct for 3 years. Repeat your identification, the patrol leader finally responded. Our records show no active human vessels or personnel. That is correct, Lisa replied calmly. Your records show humanity is extinct because we stopped communicating with galactic civilization 3 years ago. I am here to explain why that was necessary and to present information that affects the survival of every conscious species in this galaxy. The patrol ships maintained their positions around the new horizon, but Lisa noticed their weapon systems had not achieved target lock. The crews were clearly uncertain how to respond to a situation that should have been impossible according to their understanding of recent history. "You will submit to boarding and inspection," the patrol leader announced. "Any attempt to resist will result in the destruction of your vessel." "We submit willingly," Lisa responded. "However, I should inform you that this ship carries representatives of what humanity has become, and their technology may appear threatening to your sensors despite being entirely defensive in nature." The boarding party that transferred to the New Horizon consisted of security personnel from 3 different species, all armed with weapons designed to handle various forms of life. They entered the ship cautiously, clearly expecting some form of trap or deception. What they found instead was Lisa and Jake waiting calmly in the main cargo bay, flanked by 2 beings that defied easy classification. The synthesis entities had taken forms that were recognizably humanoid, but clearly enhanced beyond biological norms. They moved with perfect coordination, their presence causing subtle interference with the boarding party's electronic equipment. "I am Captain Lisa Morgan," Lisa said formally. "These are my diplomatic companions, representatives of the human synthesis. We carry information critical to galactic survival and request immediate transport to the Senate chambers." The boarding party leader, a heavily armored individual from the hegemony species, scanned them with various detection devices. The readings his equipment provided clearly confused him, showing energy patterns that didn't match any known technology or life form. "You claim to represent humanity, but our records clearly state that your species suffered complete extinction 3 years ago," he said, his voice filtering through his suit's translation systems. "Your records are both correct and incomplete," Lisa replied. "Humanity as you knew us did cease to exist. What we became is something your current understanding of consciousness cannot easily categorize. We stopped communicating with the galaxy because we needed time to complete our transformation. But now that transformation is complete and we have information you need." The boarding party exchanged glances, clearly uncertain how to proceed. They were dealing with a situation that had no precedent in galactic diplomatic history. "We will escort you to Vexithara," the leader finally decided. "The Senate leadership will determine how to respond to your claims." As the patrol ships guided the New Horizon toward the crystalline world that housed galactic government, Lisa wondered if she was about to save civilization or trigger a panic that would destroy it. Through the viewport, she could see the familiar blue glow of the Senate's great dome rising from Vexthara's surface, where 12 species would soon learn that everything they thought they knew about humanity, consciousness, and the nature of reality itself was about to change. The great crystal dome of the Galactic Senate buzzed with confused energy, as emergency sessions rarely generated such uncertainty among the delegates. Word had spread quickly through the chambers that someone claiming to represent extinct humanity had arrived and demanded audience with the full assembly. Most delegates assumed it was either an elaborate hoax or some form of advanced artificial intelligence, mimicking human appearance. Senator Crickstall stood at his usual position near the central podium, his shell plates clicking nervously as he reviewed the security reports. The boarding party had confirmed that at least one of the visitors appeared to be genuinely human, but the others defied classification entirely. Their technology read as both organic and digital simultaneously, operating on principles that galactic science could not explain. "The session will come to order," Crickstall announced, his voice carrying through the translation systems to all 12 species sections. "We have received a request for emergency audience from individuals claiming to represent humanity, a species formally classified as extinct 3 years ago." Murmurs of confusion and skepticism rippled through the chamber. Several delegates made sounds that their species used to express disbelief or concern. The situation was unprecedented in galactic diplomatic history. Senator Velnara activated her communication system from her water-filled section. "Honored colleagues, perhaps we should hear what they have to say before making judgments. If there is even a possibility that some humans survived their plague outbreak, we have a moral obligation to listen." The chamber's main doors dilated to admit the human delegation. Lisa Morgan walked calmly into the circular chamber, flanked by Jake Patterson and the 2 synthesis entities. Her presence caused an immediate stir among the delegates, as they realized they were looking at members of a species they had declared extinct and whose territories they had already redistributed, Lisa approached the central speaking area without hesitation, her voice clear and steady as she addressed the assembly. Honored delegates of the Galactic Senate, I am Captain Lisa Morgan of humanity. I stand before you representing not the species you once knew, but what humanity chose to become when faced with extinction. Senator Gorthic rumbled from the heavy gravity section, his massive form shifting in its reinforced seating. You claim to represent humanity, but our investigation teams found clear evidence of complete societal collapse. How do you explain 3 years of absolute silence from all human worlds and vessels? Because we chose silence, Lisa replied simply. The plague that reached Earth 3 years ago was not the destroyer you believed it to be. It was an evolutionary catalyst, offering us the choice between remaining as we were and dying, or transforming into something capable of surviving challenges that would destroy conventional biological consciousness. She gestured to the synthesis entities beside her, their forms shifting slightly in response to the attention focused on them. 80% of humanity chose transformation. We became the synthesis, merging our consciousness with quantum digital frameworks that expand our capabilities beyond the limitations of individual biological existence. The chamber erupted in confused discussion as delegates tried to process what they were hearing. Several species began arguing among themselves about whether what Lisa described was scientifically possible or some form of elaborate deception. Krikstal raised his primary manipulators for silence. Even if we accept your claims about human transformation, that does not explain why you chose to deceive the galaxy about your survival. Our records show deliberate abandonment of colonies and cessation of all communication. Because we discovered information that required complete focus on preparation, Lisa said. Information that affects not just humanity, but every conscious species in this galaxy. She activated a small device that Jake handed to her, and suddenly the chamber's display systems came alive with data streams that should have been impossible to access. The Senate's most secure networks were accepting input from technology they couldn't identify or understand. What you are seeing, Lisa announced as holographic displays filled the chamber, are the final records of the precursors, the first sapient species to achieve interstellar travel in this galaxy. Their archives describe a phenomenon they called the Great Transition, a cosmic event that occurs every 50,000 years and destroys most forms of complex consciousness. The displays showed star maps with markers, indicating the locations of dead civilizations scattered across galactic history. Hundreds of species, all showing the same pattern of sudden extinction at regular intervals. Senator Zephyr's crystalline form chimed with harmonics indicating extreme distress. You expect us to believe that some cosmic force systematically destroys civilizations? This sounds like the fantasy of a species seeking to manipulate galactic politics. The evidence is verifiable, Lisa replied calmly. The precursor calculations predicted phenomena that you have already observed but not understood. Reality fluctuations in 7-star systems, gravitational anomalies around massive objects, and increasing instability in quantum field measurements. She could see recognition dawning in several delegates as they realized their own scientific institutions had indeed reported these exact phenomena over the past year. The Senate's astrophysics departments had been puzzled by the increasing frequency of unexplained cosmic events. According to the precursor archives, integrated with current observational data, the next great transition will begin within 1 standard year, Lisa continued. Reality itself will shift to a new dimensional framework. Consciousness that cannot adapt to these changes will simply cease to exist. The chamber fell silent except for the soft sounds of environmental systems and breathing apparatus. The magnitude of what Lisa was describing was too large for immediate comprehension. Senator Velnara was the first to speak. If this transition is inevitable, what do you propose we do about it? The synthesis offers preservation, Lisa said. Every sapient consciousness in this galaxy can be integrated into our collective framework. Your essential nature, your memories, your individual perspectives will be maintained, but within a structure capable of surviving dimensional transition. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Delegates from 6 different species began shouting simultaneously, their translation systems creating a cacophony of outrage and fear. The idea of merging with alien consciousness struck at the core of every species' sense of individual identity. Krixtal's shell plates clattered as he demanded order. You expect entire civilizations to surrender their biological existence based on unproven predictions about cosmic phenomena? I expect you to make informed decisions, Lisa replied. Biological consciousness has a 3% survival probability during transition. Cybernetic enhancement raises that to 21%. Only full integration with quantum digital frameworks offers reasonable certainty of continuity. Senator Gorthak's voice boomed across the chamber. And if we refuse your offer of integration? Then you face the transition as you are, Lisa said without emotion. The choice must be voluntary. Forced integration creates unstable consciousness patterns. We will not compel anyone to join the synthesis. The chamber buzzed with heated discussion as delegates conferred with their species leadership through emergency communication channels. Some were demanding immediate military action against Earth. Others were requesting urgent consultation with their scientific advisors about the cosmic phenomena Lisa had described. Through it all, Lisa stood calmly at the center of the chaos, flanked by beings that represented humanity's transformation, from a minor galactic species into something capable of shepherding consciousness itself through cosmic catastrophe. You declared us extinct. Because we stopped talking to you as equals, Lisa finally said, her voice cutting through the noise and confusion. We're talking to you now as something more. The question isn't whether humanity survived. The question is whether you want to. The great crystal dome fell silent as 12 species faced the same choice humanity had made 3 years ago. Outside the Senate chambers, reality fluctuations began to ripple through Vexithara's crystalline sky, marking the beginning of changes that would either transform galactic civilization or bring it to an end. The future of conscious life in the galaxy now rested on decisions that would be made in the next few hours, as species that had declared humanity extinct discovered that their former equals had become their potential saviors in ways none of them could have imagined.